Now that we can create a single block on the screen, our next step is to draw the entire board according to what our board object has generated. So our board object has been populated, and now we want to display that on the screen. So we'll need a new method here called draw board, and that method will go through all of the rows and all of the columns and create semi-transparent squares, and then it will create blocks on top of them. So let's add that method, draw board. Draw board will need we will need some variables here, which will be I, J for the loop, block, square. But before we jump into creating the loop, let's create the bitmap texture for the squares, for the semi-transparent black squares. So semi-transparent black squares, square bitmap, this.add.bitmap data. The size will be the size of the blocks plus 4 pixels. This.block. All the sizes that you'll see here are all arbitrary, and I've just come up with those sizes by trying different sizes and seeing which ones look the best. The square map needs to have its context set up, so we need to fill a style which will be black. This works just like a HTML5 canvas. So we access the 2D context, and we also need to fill the rectangle all the way from the top corner to the entire size. So we can just reuse that right there. Now we can do our iteration. From I all the way to the number of rows. So we'll go for each one of the rows, creating the corresponding squares of the corresponding beans or candies or blocks, however you want to call them. And we will be incrementing our index. Same thing for the columns. This dot number of columns, J++. And now is when we create our squares. So this is just arbitrary dimensions where I'll be placing all the elements. Whenever you calculate dimensions that multiply the index, is because you want to move it as many spaces as you need to. For example, in this case, this represents a column, so I want to be moving it for each column a bit further. The same thing for the rows. Times, and in this case, this block size plus 6. Now I can create my squares. Square equals this.add.sprite located in X, Y, and for the texture I'm going to use bitmap. I also want to set the anchor point, set to the middle, and I want to set the alpha property to 0.2 so that it's almost transparent. This should give us all of these squares. So now we have all the squares being drawn. See how easy it was to draw the squares once you get, you have a play with this if you want it more to the side, right, more to the left, or the whole thing up or down, and then what's the separation going to be between the rows and the columns. And we also want to be adding blocks, as I mentioned. So we can use this.create block, passing X, passing Y. For data, what do we need to pass? So let's start from the beginning. Asset. We need to pass an asset that will be block plus the corresponding variation, which can go all the way from 1 to 6. On preload.js, I already accounted for them, so you've got all of them, and you've got some extra 2 ones if you want to have more variations. So this is accessing this will be simple. We'll just do this dot board. We access our board. See how we're combining the model that we did before with this new method. We access the grid, row I, column J. That gives us the corresponding asset. We also need to pass in the row, which is I, and the column, which is J. So if I refresh the page, you can see now that we are drawing all of the candies. But one problem, see how the semi-transparent squares are located on top of them, because we added the groups block at the beginning and now we're adding new things, so they go on top of the previous group. What we need to do here is send our whole group of blocks to the top. For that, after we finish displaying the grid, I'm going to type in this.game.world.bring to top and pass in the whole blocks group. This will allow me to have the beans or the candies shown on top. So to summarize, what we've done here is iterate through the whole grid. We know the number of columns, we know the number of rows, and for each one of the cells, we add our own semi-transparent square, and then we add our own block on top of that, our own candy, using the method that we previously created.